Hi everyone, welcome. So we'll get started in about 5 minutes time when everybody's just come in. So if you just want to grab a cup of tea, just to wait while we get started. Hi everyone, just to reiterate what I was saying a couple seconds ago, if you just want to come in, grab a cup of tea, we'll just get started in about 3 to 5 minutes, just so that everyone can just like come in, and settle in, and then yeah, we'll get started with the webinar. I think we will get, I know I said 3 to 5 minutes, guys, but I think we'll just give it like 1 minute. What do you think, Sue? Do you think it should I know I'm changing up my times a lot, but what
I
do you
think
think?
I think an extra minute is cool.
And
Yeah.
yeah, that's cool. Yeah, I forget 3 to 5 minutes can be sometimes very long if you're waiting for like these. So I think a minute is good. Okay. Mm, all right. I think we're good to start now. Do you agree, Sue?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good.
I think it's good. We've given people enough time. They'll just filter in anyways. So hi guys, welcome. Thank you for joining us this evening. So we are proud to present and host another one of our webinar Wednesdays. And so today we'll be talking about something that I'm sure a lot of you have questions about, are looking forward to in the best way, and that is Oriel. So I'll just get started off with the introductions. My name is Shamsa. I'm the IPSF officer on the BPSA executive. I went to the University of Birmingham, so I'm currently a graduate in my foundation training year. So I started about a month ago, or we all started about a month ago. So we're kind of, getting well quite well into our foundation training year. And I'm currently doing a hospital GP split in South Yorkshire. So yeah, that's me. I don't know if Sue, you wanna take away?
So my name is Sue, and on the BPSA, I am the competitions coordinator, and I'm currently training at Great Ormond Street. So it's a 12-month hospital placement, and then I went to the University of East Anglia.
Nice, thank you. So yeah, just to reiterate, this today will be about Oriole. It'll be a great opportunity for you guys to ask any questions. So if you have any questions throughout the entire webinar, just pop them in the Q&A chat and then we'll get to them when we can. So I'll just run through what we'll be doing for the next hour, hour and a half. So we'll be going over all the components that kind of that you'll be facing in terms of Oriole. So we'll be going over kind of Oriel and Oriel preferencing, as well as the calculations and the situational judgment test that you'll have to do in the Oriel exam. And then we'll just kind of be rounding it all up with a summary and some links, some resources for you guys that you might want to use. And like I said, we'll be taking any questions that you guys may have, and we'll be answering it at the end of today's webinar. So yeah. So I'll just be going over kind of the Oriole background. I know you guys are kind of well into it. I believe you have already kind of registered and you're looking towards booking your Oriole test. So with Oriel, as you may know, may not know, it actually includes a couple of sectors. So it includes community, GP, and hospital placements, but it excludes some independent pharmacies and industry. But one thing to note is that if you still wanted to go through Oriel, you can do that as well as apply to these independent pharmacies. So you can do both at the same time. You're not restricted. If you do Oriel, you don't. It's not you can't apply to independent pharmacies or industry. If anything, it gives you just more options. So in terms of preferencing, there are a lot of things that go into preferencing, and you may or may not have been talked about it. You may have been asked, maybe you've asked questions to people who've gone through it or not. But a couple of things to think about when you're preferencing is, for instance, what kind of sector do you want to go into? So obviously some people just really want to do for hospitals, so they only choose hospital placements. Like I said, there's GP and there's community. Some might not really care about which sector they go into, so they are okay with going into any type of sector. Or you can either have now they're introducing multi-sector placements. So I know this year, I'm not sure about last year, but they have started to introduce multi-sector placements. So for instance, you're able to go into community, GP, and hospital for the entire 12 months. So you'll be in, say, community for 4 months, GP for 4 months, hospital for 4 months. Or they might be splits where, like, for example, what I'm doing, hospital GP split, hospital community split. So, or like I said, you can just have that single placement at a single sector. So it just depends on what you prefer and what you'd like to do throughout the entire year. In terms of hospitals as well, you can be in a general hospital, you can be in a specialist hospital. So like what Sue mentioned, she is at Great Ormond Street, which is a children's hospital, right? Yeah. I
Yeah.
need that to double check it. Yeah. So it's a children's hospital. So you can choose to be just in that for 12 months, or you can, for instance, there's also mental hospitals that you could also be in, mental health hospitals. So yeah, it just depends on kind of if you'd like to specialize, if you'd like just a general idea of how everything goes on in a hospital, you can also do that. Another thing that people like to think about is commute. So obviously this depends. Are you planning to live at home? Are you planning to move out? How far are you planning to commute when it comes to your foundation training year? Because of course it's for a year. You have to kind of be realistic, think about what you're able to do and what you're able to realistically do. So some people they might really, really care about the commute and make sure that it's only within, say, like 45 minutes to an hour of where they're living. So they might decide, oh, you know what, I'm not really too bothered about which sector I go into, just as long as the commute isn't more than 45 minutes. Another thing is, are you willing to move to the place that you're actually putting on your preferencing list? So it's one thing to say that you don't mind being in any hospital, but if you live in, I'm not sure, if you live in Sheffield, are you really willing to move to, I don't know, some faraway place like London? I know that's maybe not too far away, but that's far away for some people. So are you basically willing to commute? Are you basically willing to move to a whole other city, kind of start a whole other life? If not, like I mentioned, how long are you willing to commute? So yeah, that's another question to ask yourself. Another thing is to look at how many trainees in total that the placement are actually accepting. So it's another thing that people like to look at. So yeah, that's another question to think about when preferencing. So now we'll talk a little bit about the calculation side of the exam. So, like you guys know, there are two parts of the exam. There is a situational judgment test and there's the calculations. So the calculations are 10 questions in 20 minutes. So that is roughly about 2 minutes per question. Or yeah, that's basically how it's advised or like recommended to sort of look at it just so that you know how if you go over 2 minutes and how you should like think about how you should think about the exam like and then the SGT exam you can see is 35 questions in 70 minutes, but we'll just focus on the calculation side of things. So in terms of preparation, Some things that kind of worked for me, and I know worked for a lot of people, is just going over practice questions in time conditions, doing loads of that. I know some people who did like one paper a day. Personally, I did like one paper a week, but I guess it just depends on how often you feel like you need to be practicing the practice questions. Sue, I'm not sure how did you kind of go about it with yourself?
For me, very similar to Shamsa. I would say little and often with calculations, just because sometimes you can get a bit complacent with just the method. And rather than like understanding the question, you just kind of know the equation for it. And sometimes the equation works, but sometimes like you actually need to know what's going on. So I would recommend maybe spacing the calcs practice out and also getting one of the calculators that you can use in the exam and practice on that. Just like you want to be as familiar with everything you have before the exam, in the exam, if that makes sense.
Mhm. Yeah, exactly. And I think practicing in the same condition that you'll actually be in the oral exam is really, really important because obviously you don't want to be kind of blindsided by certain functions or how things are different from what you've been practicing on. And of course, you'll be using a computer, so you want to know how everything is kind of laid out and how everything will be, so you're not, like I said, blindsided by anything. So yeah, in terms of preparation, practice questions under time conditions. And we have a lot of resources and links at the end of this webinar that we'll also provide to you guys. So yeah.
And one more thing, like the picture on the last slide, that's actually one of the practice, like the screen, like to practice on. That's the same as what you'd see in the exam. Then you can find that on the website. Like we've linked it at the end. So I would really recommend just getting familiar with the format of the exam because it will be online. Like you do have whiteboards, but like just get used to seeing questions online and get used to like being able to like type things and just read it on the screen.
Yeah, so talking about whiteboards and also the calculators that you mentioned earlier. So this is what y- you'll be provided with in the exam, not the calculators, sorry. So in the exam, you'll be provided with a A4 whiteboard sheet that is something that you can't actually, correct me if I'm wrong, Sue, but you can't actually rub it out. It's some so you might find that you need to write really tiny, and of course you've got 10 questions to go through. So that's something to just bear in mind. But you can ask for extra whiteboards within the exam. But of course, you just need to just think about the time that you have left. In terms of calculators, that's something that you have to get yourself. So on the right here, you can see the approved calculators for the oral exam, and these are also approved for the GPHC exam. So if you are not prone to losing things like myself, you can buy that one calculator for the oral exam, and it will help you in the GPHC assessment in the next 2 years. So yeah. So yeah, those are the approved calculators. One thing, like we mentioned, it's really important to just kind of go through practice questions in time conditions, but it's also really important to make possibly perhaps use the calculators that are approved in the oral exam so that, like I mentioned, you know the functions, you know how it works. You're not looking at different functions and thinking, how do I use this calculator? So it's really important that you use the calculator that you'll be using in the oral exam. Another thing to bear in mind is that you can actually say that you get stuck on a question. Like we mentioned, it's about 2 minutes per question, but say that you get stuck on a question, it's running over 2 minutes. You want to move on. Maybe you find another question easier. You can flag that question that you found harder, move on to an easier question, do that within, say, 30 seconds, however long it takes you, and then go back to that question that you found harder at the end. Because obviously, it's very important that you kind of are able to look at all the questions at least, and kind of prioritize which ones you want to answer or which ones you found easier, so you can then go back and do the harder ones. Of course, that depends on how your technique works, but that's just personally what I found the best thing for myself to do. I don't know if Sue, you had a different approach to it or.
Yeah, I think for me, I also like if I couldn't get it within the first 20 seconds, I'd be like, okay, it's a question to come back to. Because I think in the exam, like if you cannot do a question, it really puts you off for the rest of say the math section. So I would say like just give your chance, give your brain a chance to like jog a bit. And once you've done a few questions, it kind of builds your esteem up. It's like actually, yeah, I can do this, and then you can just go back towards like the questions that you couldn't do. But I think both me and Shemza actually had a bit of time left for the maths. So actually it is plenty of time. Just like don't mull over the ones that you can't do because there will definitely be some that you can do. But with regards to whiteboards, like I have quite fat writing, so I was like asking for boards all the time. And it's not that you like that you're not allowed. I feel like you just cannot wipe on the boards because it's like a piece of laminated paper and they're just really horrendous. Like there's no cloth or anything, so I just wouldn't waste your time wiping things. I think just ask for more boards, and yeah, it's fine.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you. So yeah, that was the calculations. Like I mentioned at the start of the webinar, if you guys have any questions at all, please just put them down in the chat, and we'll answer them all at the end. And now I'm just going to pass on to Sue to talk about the situational judgment test.
Yes, the situational judgment. I feel like this is the bit that everyone is most intimidated by. For sure, when I was going through Oriel, I thought this was going to be the worst bit. But hopefully, after the session, you guys won't think it's as bad as you thought it was before coming. And I can see that there was a question in the chat, and it says, "Isn't SJT 54 questions in 104 minutes?" I think. Yeah, it is 54, but I think the practice one doesn't give you 54, which is a bit annoying. But yeah, you're right, it is 54 questions. So we'll just quickly go through the types of questions that you'll see in SGT. So there are two types. The first one is ranking. So you have five options, a scenario, and then five options, and you have to rank them from most appropriate to least appropriate. And then you've got the second type, and I think there are eight options in this one. And then you have to select the three most appropriate actions. And before like we go into how to answer each question, we've got some general tips about SGT. So before even like starting like scenario-based questions, I would have a look through the patient attributes framework. If you're not sure what that is, that's okay. I've linked it at the end of the slides. I feel like the path, you don't need to look very much into detail. You just kind of need to get an idea of common themes they're looking for. So a lot of it is like working in multidisciplinary teams. A lot of it is working within your remit, knowing when to signpost to like someone more senior than you, and things like that. And I would definitely do the mock paper, do it in time conditions, and just see how you do. If you're anything like me, I did rubbish the first time around, and I didn't get like 100% in a lot of questions. I think I got maybe just like one or two in like the rank five, and then sometimes like the select three most appropriate, I didn't get any of them sometimes. But I think when you actually go like once you finish that paper, go and read the rationales, discuss it with your friends and have a practice, and then um do the paper again, but leave a space between the time that you kind of discuss the rationales and when you've done that mock paper. Maybe give it like a week or two, or like a couple of weeks before the exam. Just do it again, and then I feel like that for me made a massive difference. And stuff did get better. I think me and Shemza both got like our top 10. I got my first choice. Shemza, you got your first choice as well, or
I got my second choice. Yeah.
yeah.
So I got
So
my second, but still, pretty up there.
exactly, yeah. So we managed to do it, and I wouldn't say that my personality is like it correlates with Oriel. I feel like it's when you practice, you kind of understand the rationales.
Yeah,
Um,
no, I understand. Yeah, I agree as well. Like I feel like honestly just going through the answers, answering the questions, and just really figuring out how they want you to answer each question really helped. So yeah, going through the rationales and talk, like you mentioned, talking about it with your friends and just having a discussion around it also really helps understand what they want you to understand, essentially. So, yeah.
the next slide, please. Thank you. Okay, so The ranking questions, how I approached it, I think generally I approached it through understanding the rationales, but then sometimes you get a scenario and you're just like, I actually have no idea what I would do in this case. So I think when I had a question that I had no clue what to do, I kind of took it from a more systematic approach. So the options that you see for the ranking questions, you're pretty much likely to know which one is the most appropriate action and which one is the least appropriate action. Those two are the ones that normally stick out the most. So I would tackle those two first. And I would put the most appropriate, so you can just drag it to the top, and then the least appropriate, drag it to the bottom. So you then got like uh, three in the middle where you're like, well, what do I do with them? Um, and then that's when I would think, like, what did I read in the path? Is there like one that solves the problem more holistically? So is there one that can show patient-centered care to both patients if there are two patients and like without compromising the care of one? Is there one where you can kind of solve a problem without causing conflict? So it's kind of stuff like that. I think the more you practice those questions, the more you will be able to answer them. Because in the exam, I don't think the questions were that much different to the mock. I actually thought the mock was a really good representation of what I saw in the exam. And then for the next style of questions, it's like the best three options. So whenever I think actually this one was a lot harder than the ranking questions. But that's just because there were more options and I personally found that harder. But I found that when I was doing these, the three options that were selected that were the answer, they were actually related in some way. So sometimes this would be in like a step-by-step process. So maybe like when you select the three options, like firstly you would do this, and then secondly you would do this, third like this is what happens. I mean that's not always the case, but often the three options will provide a more holistic solution to a problem. So you've kind of touched um, all bases, and you haven't kind of left one that hasn't looked at patient-centered care, but you've looked at MDT working. And hopefully when you read the scenarios and do the questions, it will make more sense. And I think the tricky bits are with the pick three, that some options can feel like they're saying the same thing, or some options can be quite similar. So I think, yeah, I think that's definitely read the rationales and actually take time to distinguish how those two options differ, because that's what kind of throws people off in the exam. And then at the bottom, I've just put some key themes about what you would be expecting, what they would expect you to think about in the exam. So patient-centered care is a huge one, MDT working within your remit. Yeah, these are all things that I think I mentioned in the last slide. Yeah, do you have anything to add, Shamsa?
No, I think you covered it all. I think, yeah, like you mentioned, I found the three best options kind of more difficult just because, you know, there were the other two that you're just thinking, maybe it could be, maybe it couldn't be. But yeah, just going through the rationale, realizing and understanding what like how they want you to answer and why that's the case, really does help. But yeah.
Okay, summaries and final tips. So the first bullet point is adjustments. I think that's really important because in a lot of talks, like adjustments sometimes gets missed off. And I think that's important. Like if you need adjustments, like you can get them. So I personally did not go through it myself, but I've spoken to people that have had adjustments and they just put what they need in their original application when they're applying for the oral exam. So just apply with your evidence, and I think the evidence just helps speed things up, because you have proven things. And I would say if you need adjustments, get it in ASAP. Hopefully you have all applied for Oriel at this point. But if not, if you have adjustments, I would say get it in as soon as possible, because if they need anything, that means you have time to send whatever you need to. And then our next bit of advice is to practice, because to be honest, practice actually makes a huge difference. Like, and practicing under time conditions, like you actually get your brain to um, think as fast as it needs to in the exam. Um, but me and Shamsa both had time in SJT as well. We both had a lot of time left over. So I hope that as you guys practice, you can see that actually there is a lot of time for you to read a question and rank some things. Like similar to calcs and SJT, if you don't know a question, just flag it and come back to it. Or just rank anything and then come back to it and check it and see if you feel the same way. Um, because I think one of the things that can kill your time is that if you just spend a long time looking at one question and you don't really get anywhere, and that's how you lose time. But otherwise, I think we had like a lot of time to spare. How much time did you have, Shamsa?
I had quite a bit. Like I could just go through every question again just to look at it again. But yeah, I think that's one of the kind of fear-mongering things about when people talk about Oriel, or like a lot of people look at the times and they think, oh, we won't have time at all to go through everything. But if you just kind of use the things that we've said, like flagging, and just use every kind of help that, comes your way, you'll be able to kind of get through it in within the time. So it's doable. That's basically what we're trying to say. So yeah.
It's 100% doable. And one more thing about calculations that I think we forgot to mention is that if you forget to bring your calculator, it's not the end of the world. There is a calculator on screen. It's just not very good because you have to like press the buttons like with your mouse. So yeah, if you forget, it's okay, but it's just not fun to have to use like an on-screen calculator. And then just to remind about whiteboards because especially for maths, like I'm the sort of person that needs to write it out. So I guess if you're at home, practice writing, like you're working out as well, because you don't want to be like faffing around for pens in the exam and like writing out, working out that you're not used to. If you're used to doing things in your head, then do it in your head. But if you're someone that has to write it out, I would say write it out. Um, and then any other final tips? I feel like I know I think it's easy for us to say because we've done it now, but with the rationales, I would treat them as a mark scheme. And rather than seeing Oriel as something that is so intimidating and impossible and only personality based, I would really use the rationales and just kind of read it and understand it and believe it and kind of just ingrain it in your head because that's essentially what they're testing and it doesn't change. Yeah, it's very, very similar. The questions you can actually, if someone told me that was a mock paper, I feel like I would believe them because the rationales like line up so well. So if you're not really sure where to start, try a mock paper and discuss it. Okay, so good luck. This is the end of our advice. Hopefully, it was helpful, but there are time for questions. And on the last slide, we do have some links. Hopefully, we can get this PowerPoint out to everyone. Um, I can see one question. It says, how long should it take to prepare for the exam, and how many months or weeks before? Personally, definitely not months before. I don't think I have the brain capacity to remember months. Um, so I think I actually prepared just over summer. Um, so maybe like a month max or 2 months max, but not like consistent practice. Maybe I did calcs just throughout the year because that's what we do at uni. We just have to do calcs exams. So I think calcs probably was a longer, more long term, but short burst kind of thing. SJT, I think I just did within 1 or 2 months. Shemza?
Yeah, I think I started like I would say around the 2 month prior to the actual exam. Um, it was during summer as well. I think, yeah, it was, but the thing is, it was quite intermittent, I suppose. It wasn't as constant. So I think as the time kind of went on, especially like a month before, like a couple of weeks before, I got more consistent with mock papers and all of that. So yeah, 2 month, a month to 2 months. But yeah. And one thing that I've just put on just moved the slide to the next one. These are some links that we were talking about throughout the entire webinar that you can actually access in terms of the handbook, the workforce training and education resources. So those are like your mock tests. Um, that you can access for the SJT and calculations. Also, what Sue was talking about earlier, the professional attributes framework that you can look to see how they actually want you to answer each question in the SJT. And also the permitted exam materials. So like the GPHC approved calculators that you can use in both the oral exam and GPHC assessment. Um, Anything else you'd like to add, Sue? I think that's all the links, to be honest.
I think that is all the links.
Oh, I think we've got some more questions.
Mhm.
So I think you might be better answering this, but is the yellow SJT book good for preparing? I'm not sure. Did you use the yellow SJT book?
I did not, but I feel like personally, this is just my opinion, but I think you have to be quite careful with the stuff that you buy for SGT because like the people that write your exams have not produced a book on this, and therefore the people that have produced books on your exam, like I don't know, for me like it just doesn't like fit. I just would use the rationales that people have written your exam have provided you, because at the end of the day, I think it can be a very subjective thing, and you should just like think the way that the exam will be, if that makes sense. So yeah, I personally didn't use it, and I think I know a lot of people that did use it, and I know a lot of people that haven't used it. And to be honest, both of us, like both cohorts, did okay. So I think it is really dependent on the person. But if you don't want to buy anything, you really don't have to.
Yeah, I think all the resources that are already kind of given by HE and just that are out there can be enough for some people. But I think also if you feel like it would bring you peace of mind, because obviously, the anxiety that you might feel in the exam can possibly affect how you do. So if you feel like you would benefit from the book, there's no harm in getting it. I guess it just kind of gives you more more peace of mind. But yeah, and also for myself, I didn't use the book. Um, I just kind of used the resources that were kind of given to me from my uni or just online as well. Yeah. Um, Another
So
question is,
one more thing to add, sorry. I would say that if you were to use the book, it would be quite good to actually just read the scenarios, and and you can answer the question, but like if there are discrepancies between the rationales that, like the way of thinking that you see in the mock paper versus the book, I would say that's really normal. But I would say your gut is probably right in thinking actually the book sounds a bit wrong, because once you've done the mock paper, like it's so repetitive that you'll actually see a pattern in how they answer questions. So if you see that the rationale in the book doesn't match, I would say that's quite like standard.
another question. Sue, can you give a brief description of how your placement is so far at GOH?
Yes, actually, I love Gosh. I can talk about Gosh all day. So I'm currently at my cytos rotation. So I'm in hematology and oncology. And yes, it is really emotionally draining and it is really tough, but you learn a lot. And it's not just like look things up in the BNF, look things up in the EMC. Like I haven't used those two resources that much. Like we do a lot of looking into research papers, looking into like Gosh write their own protocols with different hospitals. So we look at different protocols, look at like new therapies, and they have today I went to a lunchtime teaching session. Sometimes there are some before lunch, sometimes it's after lunch. It just depends who's available and when. But there's a lot of opportunities to learn, and like there's stuff about CAR T cell therapy, which is really new. And I think for me, I like it because it's a research hospital, and you see a lot of new therapies and clinical trials. Obviously, because Gosh have a lot of funding. Um, Funding, I feel like it is a bit sad that a lot of hospitals don't have funding to do things, but it is a real privilege being able to see new therapies being rolled out and stuff in clinical trials. And everyone is really supportive and friendly. So, yeah.
Great. We've got a couple more questions. Um, so is the SJT book from Amazon a good one? So we kind of already answered about kind of buying other resources. So yeah, that's just, I mean, do you have anything else to add on not just the yellow SJT book, but kind of buying resources? in general for it.
I don't think I have anything to add about
Yeah.
GPT. There's another question I think you missed about calcs, like website for calcs. I personally did not use
Oh yeah.
one.
Mm-hmm.
I just used math questions that my uni gave me. But there are lots of books for calcs. Calcs is very systematic and objective, so I feel like any pharmaceutical calculations book, they'll get you through.
Yeah, same. I just kind of used the resources that my uni gave me in terms of calculations because we had calculations each year, and I think that's pretty much a normal thing for universities to do and schools of pharmacy to do. So in terms of a good website, I'm sorry that I can't provide you with one. But yeah, like Sue mentioned, there are many resources out there in terms of pharmaceutical calculations that you could use. Next question. Where can we read up more on the limitations of trainee pharmacists and what they can do?
I
Hmm.
personally wouldn't read about that. I would just look at the rationales in the mock paper because to be honest, it's not possible to put yourself in every situation. I think look at the rationales. There will be lots of scenarios where you have to be thinking, am I working in my remit? Should I active like you have to be proactive, but I think when you do read the rationales, you'll see, okay, this is a scenario where I would have to refer to someone more senior.
Yeah. Okay, next question. Is the exam on paper or computer? It's on computer. So yeah, that's why we were kind of saying that it's really important for you to kind of practice questions. So like in the first slide, there was a practice question in the same format as the exam. So perhaps like a couple of weeks or a couple of times before your exam, you might want to practice those questions specifically on that website, just so that you can know how it's going to be in the actual exam and you can prepare for it properly. So yeah, the exam is on computer. Next question. Are online resources good to use? So kind of also have already answered that as well. Yeah, just if it's something that you feel like you really, really, really want to, online resources. Sorry, I'm assuming it's different from paid resources, aren't they? So yeah, online resources are good to use. We've got the links here that you can use that are really useful for you to look into. So yeah, anything else to add, Sue, to that?
I would just say anything on the NHSE, just read it and read
Yeah.
it. Because actually there aren't that many resources for pharmacy students. Like if you compare like med student resources, like pharmacy is just like nothing. It's just so small. And I think there's not much approved stuff, which is the problem. Because there'll be lots of resources, but then they're not really approved. So it's like, do I really want to do this or not? I would just have a look at the NHSE website and just do everything on there. And I think one more logistical thing that I forgot to mention was that when you, Shemsa, is it okay if you go back to that slide with the example of the paper? Not the paper, the exam format. Yeah, that one. Thank you. So, in the exam, like this is exactly what you'll see on the right. And then when you press next, like that's kind of when you start the exam. But there's like a flag in the corner. I don't know which side, but there's also a timer in the corner. So it's like you don't have to worry about like checking clocks and things. Just know that there is a timer and that you can see the time. Um, and between your SJT, between the calcs and SJT, you do have like an option to just have a 2 minute breather if you want to. Personally, I didn't use it because adrenaline was pumping. I was like, I just want to do the exam and go. But it is there. Like you don't have, no one's expecting you to just do calcs and then go straight into SJT if you don't want to. That's okay.
Okay, okay, as a year 3 student, what would you advise us to do now? Mm, So yeah, as a third year student, what would you advise us to do now? Um, hmm. Do you have any, what do you think, Sue? Because I mean, you're now in. I'm just trying to think because it's a weird time. It's like, do I start now or do I like
No, I think you
wait?
can start now. I think it's okay.
Yeah,
Yeah, like it
yeah.
depends on your antennas, but it doesn't hurt to have a look over some questions.
Hmm.
But right now, I would actually focus on your preferencing because preferencing takes so long, and it's not just even the process, it's the website is so slow. Just like leave it on in the background and then come back to it. And you don't want to be stressed about preferencing when you actually start uni. I would say do as much preferencing as you can before you start. Um, and think about the questions that we put, like, are you willing to move there? Do you want to stay in one place the whole 12 months, or do you like to be kept on your toes? Because sometimes, like, 12-month placements, like, people can get a bit complacent. So, like, if you have the split, like, three-way placements, then, like, new environments, you'll be learning a lot, but depends on you, doesn't it? But preferencing is definitely what I would do now.
So that kind of nicely goes into another question that was asked. So, how long did you guys spend on preferencing? Um, I mean, it wasn't as long as other people, I think, for myself, because I just knew I knew that be, I didn't want to commute for more than like 45 minutes, and that kind of narrowed it down. And also I'm in the north, so there were slightly less placements available for me, but um, yeah, I kind of had a more stricter um idea of like where I wanted to go. So in terms of how long it took, I can't really put a whole like a time stamp on it, but um it didn't take as long as other people. So I would say I could have probably sat down for a day and just kind of figured it all out then. But of course you kind of change your mind. You kind of think, actually, I want to, prioritize this more. So yeah, I'd say all in all, maybe like a week. But that wasn't just me being, 100% of the time on my computer trying to figure it out. It was just kind of like because I spaced it out a little bit just so I could think about it more. But yeah, for me it wasn't that long because I didn't have that many options and it was a bit stricter for me. But yeah, so what about yourself, Sue?
I'm the person that spent my whole lifetime preferencing. So the complete opposite, like, end of the spectrum from Shamsa. As soon as preferencing opened, I was like looking at hospitals, and then I would actually research like all the different hospitals because they provide a link on Oriel, don't they? And they give like a little description and things. Um, I spent so long, it wasn't even worth it because I got my first choice. Like, I actually ranked 300 places. So, the other 299 kind of went to waste. But at the same time, I'm really grateful that I did get where I am now. Because the way I did it, I wasn't even sure where to start. Like, because I think probing questions are really good, like the questions we gave you, because for us, well, for me personally, I was like, I don't even know what questions to ask myself. And I think that's what made it really tricky because kind of I think I knew I was leaning more towards hospital, but then I was also open to community, open to industry, open to GP, open to split, open to moving anywhere. And when you're open to a lot of things, it really makes preferencing really hard. I would say if you're kind of in that position, maybe start with places that you don't want to go to and put them in your not wanted. So you don't want to be put in a place where, like, yeah, where you have to travel like 10 hours away. Or if distance isn't a thing for you, then that's really hard because that was kind of like me. I applied to the Isle of Wight, um, and that is really, really far. So yeah, I would say as soon as preferencing was open, and probably a week before it closed, I was still preferencing and changing my options. Um, yeah, it took too much time. That's why I say start at summer in case you overthink things like me.
Yeah, that's fair enough. I know a lot of people last minute were just kind of going onto the website. That's another thing actually I don't recommend, is going on the preferencing website or a website kind of closer towards the closing date because you're not the only person to do that. The traffic on the website is going to be a lot, and then yeah, it's just going to be really, really slow. The website in itself is already known to be very slow, so yeah, you don't want to leave it to too like kind of last minute in terms of preferencing. Because you also have another thing, you also have to save like your yeah, save when you decide to put something in the wanted list, the not wanted list. Each time you yeah, you have to save so that it actually saves, yeah, and that you don't lose your kind of your preferencing list. So that in itself can also be, the website can crash as well. So imagine you've done your entire list of preferencing and then you haven't actually saved it and it crashes. So just be mindful of that. Just yeah, make sure to do it well in advance and keep pressing the save button, because I know a lot of people kind of tripped up on that. So next question, will this meeting be recorded and uploaded on the BPSA website? So yeah, this meeting is being recorded and will be shared on the appropriate websites. There'll also be a link in the Instagram as well. Another question. How did you keep focus for such a long test? Is there any advice on how to prepare on the day of the exam and how to keep calm? Do you want to take away on this first, or?
Yeah, I'm happy to. So I actually cannot concentrate that long either, but you know, when adrenaline gets you, it gets you. Um, and you will just, but also it doesn't have to be a long test. Like, don't make yourself sit there if you finished. I think I left like half an hour to 40 minutes early. I'm not recommending that, but like if you've checked it and you know you're not going to change anything, then just go. Like if you yeah, like it doesn't have to, you don't have to sit there for the whole length of the exam. If you finish, you can go. And I would say, in terms of keeping calm, know how you work and know what calms you down. Like for me, I went to a cafe before before I went into the exam. And I did think like, what if I really need to pee in the exam? But then I was like, well, I can just hold it because I want coffee before the exam. So, and also try and book a good time. Like, don't do like 9 a.m. in the morning. Like, book it at a time when like you know that you can think and when you're awake enough to do stuff. But to be honest, if you book it first thing in the morning, then you've got it out of the way with, because the night before you'll probably be a bit stressed as well. So, yeah, there are pros and cons.
Yeah, it definitely just depends on how you work. I think for me personally, I don't like looking at things the night before just because I feel like I just get very anxious and very nervous, and then definitely not, a couple of hours before the actual exam. I like to relax, kind of yeah, have a cup of tea, have a cup of coffee, just my comfort foods even. I like to eat that before an exam just so I feel, very much at ease. I do believe as well you can take in water as well with you. So I had that kind of, on deck as well. Just so I can, because you are in there for a very long time. Um, so for me personally, I like to kind of, focus on other things and then come back to it. And then that kind of helps reset my mind. So that 2 minutes in between, the SJT and the calcs is also something that I think I use. I know, so you didn't say you used it, but yeah, I use it just because I just need to kind of reset my brain. Because the SJT is obviously very different from the calcs. So for me, I had to get into like a different mindset for it. So yeah, just using all the kind of downtime that you can, that really helps for me. But yeah.
Yeah, I really agree with what you said about not looking at any exam things day before or even on the day, because say if you can't answer it, like that puts you in a really bad place. Like it just like your self-esteem just plummets. I would just don't do that to yourself. Even 2 days before, I don't think I would. I think 3 days, okay, let's do that. But yeah, don't I wouldn't, because you can't really change anything. Like on the day of the exam, like it's like let's just not look at that. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so with preferencing, we can put as many as we like. Right, question mark. Yeah. Yeah, so I remember when we were doing Oriel, we were told by my teachers to put like over 100 placements on your list of like wanted, right? I ended up putting like 50. Obviously, it just depends on where you want to go with people who, for example, they want to kind of go down south around London. it is recommended to put quite a lot on your list because London in itself is a very competitive city for people wanting to go, especially with hospital. So it really depends on the region that you or the area that you want to go in, and the sector that you want to go in. Um, so yeah, just think about what you actually want to do. And I'd say 100 is a good number to say like in between of everything. But yeah, you can preference, you can put as many placements on the list as you want. You can put all of them, you can put as little as 10. I wouldn't recommend putting as little as 10 because yeah. But yeah, you can put as many as you like.
Yeah,
Anything else to
I,
add?
I was the opposite. I feel like 300. But the thing is, I think one thing that you actually have to like get in your head is that if you get anything on your list of say 300, like you have to move there now, or like you reject your place. Like because it depends like how desperate you want, say, a hospital placement or a community placement or GP placement. But I actually know that if you get it, like that's the place you're going to train, unless like you upgrade or something. But yeah, be prepared to actually move.
Mhm. Great. We've got so many questions coming through. Okay, so how many pharmacies did you have on your preferences? So we've kind of already answered that. So I had like around 50. So you had like 200, 300, she said. Is it rec
I don't know if you meant like community or like, I think so. For me, just for clarification, I did about 150 hospitals, 150 everything else. So half and half.
Yeah, I was actually more, I wanted more hospital based, or if it was a split, I also kind of went for that. I'd say, yeah, the minority of placements were like community. I wasn't really wanting to go into community, but I wouldn't mind if I did. So I'd say about 70% were like hospital or like splits between hospital and GP or hospital and community or something like that. And then the 30% was like community. So yeah. Is it recommended to visit hospital open days before preferencing? I don't remember there being any hospital open days. Do you?
No, I
Or
don't.
was it?
Well, if there were, I was not aware, and I did not go. But
Yeah,
if
I
you go,
don't, I think the resources that they give, so under each placement, they provide details of the actual hospital and of the actual placement and what you'd be doing throughout the year. And then they provide links to like the website of the trust, or if it's a hospital, or website of the pharmacy or the community pharmacy. So I don't think you can actually visit the hospital, like the pharmacy department, as like an open day type of thing. But um, I think the information that they give you is something to go is something that's really good to go off, as well as maybe I know some people who looked for people who had actually done their foundation training year in the trust that they wanted to be in through LinkedIn. So that's another way that you can do just so that you can ask them for their opinions, how they found the trust. Because obviously each trust, each hospital, they have kind of different teaching styles and teaching resources. So that's something to definitely factor in when making your choices. So yeah, going on LinkedIn and asking possible, previous pre-reg or foundation training pharmacists is a good way to go about it. But yeah. Anything else to add, Sue, or
no, I think you
maybe
can do everything. Yeah.
yeah. What would you advise with hospital preferencing? I want to do hospital, which is relatively close in London due to travel. Um, so I think you're better to answer this because obviously you're in London now, and you're in hospital in London. So what would you advise with hospital preferencing around that area?
So the way I did it was think about whether I wanted to go to a general hospital or do I want to go somewhere a bit more specialist. And in the end, I went with specialist just because I like kids, I like London, so that's just what happened. But I think each one will have their pros and cons. Like you'll see a lot, like kids medicine isn't. really tested in Oriel that much, but we still like learn a lot of things that is transferable, and like a lot of like, hospitals in London are big general hospitals, so you will get a lot of insight. So I think it really depends on how you work. Like, do you like working with a lot of other trainees or a smaller group? So at Gosh, I think the current applications are only for 4 trainees. And whereas somewhere like Imperial or Guys, which have huge hospitals, like they have more than 10 trainees. So do you want to work with a lot of people or not a lot of people? Um, what else did I think about? Because I feel like if you're in London, I didn't really look at the location of the hospital because London, like the commute is like long for everyone depending on where you live, and like the transport links are so good that the location within London I just didn't consider. I just considered the type of hospital it was and who I'd be working with, and I just had a look on their websites, had a look at their values, just because like, I wanted to work with people that were quite similar to me. But I think that is taking it like probably a step further than the average person would. But yeah, I hope that helps.
Mm. Um, so I got a specific question. So Shamsa, how many jobs did you preference and which one did you get? So just to reiterate what I've said, just to kind of also bring it all together. So I preferenced around 50 places, and then I ended up getting a hospital GP split. So 6 months in hospital, 6 months in GP, in Sheffield. So I think I was able to get away with kind of preferencing less places just because Sheffield and around Sheffield and South Yorkshire, there aren't that many schools of the way I saw it was that especially in Sheffield there isn't actually a school of pharmacy, so I thought okay, this will be less competitive, and I just wanted to also originally come from here, so I wanted to move back home, so I felt like it would be kind of quote unquote easier to get a hospital placement around here, so and it was just very convenient for me as well. So yeah, that was kind of like my way of thinking. And I also didn't want to move too far away from home, or like commute too far away from home. So yeah. We've already answered how many places would you recommend to preference. Okay, what is one thing you wish you had done previously to help with your training year now? One thing you wish you had done previously to help your training year now. Hmm. Honestly, I feel like there's not that much you can do. It's very much you get there. I mean, I don't know about you, Sue, but I'm still figuring stuff out. I'm still trying to understand the different aspects of my training year and what I should do. And I think that's very much accepted. Like a lot of people, even like my peers and my colleagues and people I've talked to who have, been and past their pre-reg, they also kind of a similar thing. It takes about 1 to 2 months to really settle in to your training year, and there's nothing that you can really do to prepare. Um, you can take all the knowledge that you've learned over the past 4 years, of course, is very helpful to do so. But really and truly, it's just it's a different environment. It's a full-time job at the same time you're kind of also still in education, but so it's something that maybe you've never experienced before, and well, for me personally, I've never really experienced it, so there's nothing that I think I could have done extra to help me prepare for it. It's just really I get here and I kind of figure it out as I go along, so I'm kind of giving myself grace for that. But yeah, oh, did you do anything in particular, Sue, or
I wish I could say I did. And I wish I sounded very prepared, but no, I'm exactly the same as you. But to be honest, it's hard to prepare for something that you don't know what to expect.
exactly?
Like you
Yeah.
just don't know. I think having just an open mind, like a positive attitude, just take it as it comes. I think one thing that I do know people have regretted, not necessarily about the type of training specifically. It's more that they didn't put where they actually wanted to go in their first choice. Because, say if you actually do really well in Oriel, I don't think anyone expects to do well. No one expects to do rubbish, but no one expects to like actually get where they want to go, which is really odd. Like for me, I didn't expect so either. But like if you were to get like first place in Oriel, where would you want to go? And I think that should be your first choice because I think you'd really kick yourself if you did so good, but you didn't actually put where you wanted to go as your first.
Yeah, I think a lot of people, I remember there was kind of like a tactic or like a technique people were telling me about, saying that you should put the place that you actually wanted to go as like your second or your third choice, just in case you don't get your first. But I think I don't think personally that's a very good way to look at things, because you actually might get your first choice, and say your first choice is something that you didn't want to do and you prefer to do your second choice. Like, I think just, yeah, make sure that the places that you actually want to go are within your priority, if that makes sense. So like your first choice is actually the place that you wanted to go to. But yeah, I don't know. Did you ever hear anything like that personally, or
Yeah, I heard stuff like that, and I was like, no, like why would? Because that's saying that you'll do bad. You know what I mean? Like it's like reverse psychology.
exactly,
You're waiting just to fulfill that you've done badly. But I don't think you should do that. I think you should be more optimistic and just think, yeah, that if I get my first choice, I'll go to my first choice. If I get like my 100th choice, then I'll go to my 100th choice. Like, either way, I think you'll still qualify as a pharmacist. You'll still sit the exam. Like it's just 1 year. Um, but it will work out.
exactly. Yeah, and that's another thing to really like take home as well, is that it is just 1 year. It is quite a defining year, yes, and it can kind of possibly affect how you sit your exam at the end of it. But at the end of the day, it is just 1 year. After that, you have the opportunity to go to anywhere else that you want to go, if you do want to go anywhere else. And it's just an experience in itself as well. You might have been to placement throughout your 4 years, but it doesn't really compare to how your actual pre-reg is. So yeah, just, take that into account. Um, Next question. Oh, can you explain a bit more about what accepting an offer with upgrades is? So I think you mentioned this earlier, Sue, about, yeah, just go for
Yeah.
it.
So, okay, I can't speak from personal experience. However, I have like friends that did it. So I think you can either so say like you get your 10th choice. I think you can either just choose to accept the offer, which means yes, I'm gonna go there 100%. Or you can select the accept offer with upgrade. So that means if anyone from um the the nine before your 10th, do you know, like the nine options before the one that you got, if anyone from those options like pull out and there's a free space, then you might potentially get that space. So you just get somewhere higher up in your preference. Yeah, I hope that helps.
Um, just a curious question for Sue. What are the cons in Gosh?
The cons, I would say the difficulty um, is very, very specialist. So, you have like primary care, secondary care, gosh, is tertiary care. So, I feel like in terms of how well uni has prepared me, like it kind of hasn't. I feel like, after I finished year 4, I was like, yeah, I know a lot of medicines. Or if you mention that medicine, I'm like 70% sure that I'll have at least heard of it. But gosh, it's like actually I think I only know 20% of the medicines that they mention. So I think it is, but it is about your attitude. Like if you're open to learning, it is really good for that. But they use like a lot of antibody therapies, so I'm not very good at biologics and antibodies. And I think like physiology and pharmacokinetics of children are really difficult. So yeah, I think that's the only con. I think logistically, I'm not sure because I've only really been there for a month, so it's hard to kind of point out logistical problems with the hospital. But I think no, every hospital will have their own problems. But I think for me, the personal challenge is kind of getting my head over the different medicines, and yeah, it's just being patient with yourself.
Great. Next question. Do you mind sharing with us what you've ranked to have an idea as you got your first and second choice, which is really good? So for me, I ranked around, I can't remember the exact number, but it's like 500. I ranked it like 500 and something. Um, and I guess just for understanding I get, there's around 2,000. Well, I remember there being yeah, it was like 500 out of 2,000 or something like that. So yeah, that was my rank. What was your Sue, if you don't mind
So,
sharing?
yeah, no, I got 15, but the thing is, mine was like, pure luck. I prepared for it, but to be
Say
honest,
that.
no, but you can't like no one expects to come like really, really good. But I know people that got their first choice. Like you in like 500s. I think I had another friend that came 100 and something and 300 and something. So to be honest, I feel like as long as you get in the upper half, like you're fine. You'll probably still get where you want to go.
Yeah. And yeah, like I mentioned earlier, it's also very dependent on like where you actually decide or what you put on your preferencing list. If it's a place that's not too competitive, like not a lot of people decide to go there, not for any particular reason, but just because maybe people didn't think about it. And you rank, say like 500 like myself or 600 or 700, you might still get it. It really is just, it's dependent on so many factors. It's not just your rank alone. Obviously, that's a big decider with things, but there are so many other factors to take into consideration. Um, with the upgrade point, if I, for instance, get seventh choice, would that mean it is a 50-50 chance I get in, or is it you have to go to the 10th point? I think, or is it you have to go to the 10th point? If you don't mind, whoever sent that question, if you don't mind sending it in again, just or so do you understand or do you kind of get where they're trying to come they're trying to what they're trying to ask about?
I think I'm a bit confused about the 10th point. Um,
Yeah. So if you just want to, whoever said, oh, 10th choice. Okay, okay. So if I, for instance, get the seventh choice, would that mean it is a 50% chance that I get in? Or is it you have to go to the 10th choice? Mm,
Let
so
me
is it,
re-explain it. I think I explained it badly, but I think I kind of get the confusion. So, say like you have your Oriel rank now, and they have given you your 10th hospital, like on your preference. So if you choose to accept it with upgrades, that means you have a chance of getting anything that you preference from 1 to 9. However, if you don't get any that's 1 to 9, then you stick with your 10th. So I wouldn't say it's 50-50 because technically it depends which opening. Oh no, actually no, I think it's actually the one that's above your choice, isn't it? I don't think it's between 1 to 9.
yeah, it's not just specifically for once. So say that I think if you got your third choice, um, and your second choice, you say you got your third choice, somebody in your second choice decides to drop out, you could try and upgrade to your second choice. Yeah, so it's not specifically just for 1 to 9. If that's what you mean.
Yeah, I feel I'm
I
actually
think
not
it's
sure anymore, but I feel like if you do not get the upgrade, you just stick with your choice.
mhm.
So it's not
If
like
oh,
sorry.
so they said okay, that makes more sense. Okay, so I hope that we could um answer your question. And yeah, okay. Oh, we have a kind of co-host who's just I believe she wants to answer that more coherently than us. So I'm just gonna allow Debbie to talk. Hi Debbie, welcome.
Hi everyone. Just you guys are doing a great job. I just wanted to maybe give a little bit more clarity on the upgrading your option. Oh, I should probably introduce myself. Sorry, I'm Deborah. I'm a newly qualified pharmacist. I went to Sussex. I did Oriel a couple years ago, so I feel like a bit of an oldie. But my understanding of it is, say, so we've already got the number 10. Say you ranked whatever place you ranked and you were offered your 10th choice, you have the option from that point to either accept it, and if you accept it, then that is the place that you'll be doing for your pre-reg, you don't have any other option once you've accepted that offer. You also have the option to accept the choice with an upgrade. That means that you'll need to keep checking the Oriel website, because what could be the case is someone who's in their sick position decided that they didn't want to accept that hospital that's your sixth that they were offered. So then they've either gone to a different one or declined their offer. You then have that option to upgrade your offer and go to the hospital or the GP or the community that you're ranked at your sixth option. Did that make a bit more sense?
It did. Thank you for, yeah, thanks for that.
But be
So,
very, very careful when you get the offers. Be very, very careful with the one that you select, because if you select that you've accepted the offer, that's it. You don't have any more options. And if you decline the offer, you can't then re-enter the Oriel process. You'll then have to find an Oriel place elsewhere. And I think that this is the last year that you're able to do that. And there's less pharmacies and things like that are offering those. So just be mindful of that. Make sure you read it. And they have like guidance that they put on the website and on the actual Oriel platform as well.
so just to go off that as well, Debbie, sorry, so the follow-up question is, so then for that, how often would they need to recheck the website?
I can't really remember if they kept notifying you, but I just got into the habits of checking it like once a day, twice a day. Like I just had it saved on a tab on my phone, because I accepted mine with with the option to upgrade, and then I ended up declining the place anyway. Yeah, so I can't actually remember whether they notify you, but you do need to log on, because I think the turnaround is quite quick. That option to upgrade isn't there for like a very long time. And then what happens is everyone makes their selection, they meet that deadline, and then they re-offer them if you've accepted or not accepted.
Great, thank you so much for the clarification, Debbie. So yeah, they said thank you for the clarification. So I'm sure that you've answered their question. Great. So on to the next. Is it common to get offered a job role at the same place of your pre-reg right after you qualify? So obviously we are at the start of our pre-reg, so we're not entirely certain on it. I do know though that roles for qualified pharmacist roles do go out, I believe, around December for me, around December, January time. And there have been instances of, pre-reg pharmacists getting the job as well. But whether it's common, I'm not entirely sure. I don't know if Debbie, you want to weigh in on this, since I believe
Yeah,
you.
I can
Yeah.
I can weigh in a little bit. It really depends on the sector. So hospital applications do go out earlier. Like Shamsa said, around December, January, and then February they really pick up. But the thing with the hospital applications is their window isn't open for as long a lot of the time, so you have to be quite on it in checking those, and like you can sign up for the NHS job alerts and things like that. I'm not 100% sure. I think it differs depending on the trust. I think some have like internal hiring processes where they hire their pre-reg straight away, and then others you have to apply with the same pool of all external applicants as well. And within community, it's the same. So I think it depends on like if you're in a chain of independents, or if you're in one of the major employers. Sometimes they'll just offer you the job straight away. Like I've been offered to stay with my company. Other times people will apply for other roles. Other people will be locuming. So there's quite a lot of options there. It's also worth noting that the applications for industry places come out quite early as well, and there are also pharmacist graduate schemes where you partner up with either industry leaders or other companies, and you still practice your clinical and do other things. So there's a lot of options out there, but it's good to start looking as well, and like keeping up to date on your CV and stuff. Like use your opportunity now with Oriel, even if you don't apply for places outside of Oriel. Use this opportunity to really like boost your CV, update your CV, go to your careers department at uni and like use that so that when those applications come through, you're only adding in your pre-reg stuff. You've already got everything sorted out.
Great, thank you. I think Sue, did you want to add on to that as well?
Yeah, sorry. It was just building on the hospital aspect, because that was a question that one of the pre-regs asked as well, during our induction, about like applications to the same hospital after our pre-reg year. Was like called foundation training year now, isn't it? But they said, well, the hospital told us that, like for kids anyway, because like we have worked with kids, we are at a higher advantage. However, you still have to be interviewed. So actually, it's not that you just get offered a job straight away. So I think wherever you go, if it's an NHS hospital, they have to interview as part of this, like policies and things, and just to maintain like fairness and equality and things. So yeah, do expect an interview if you are wanting to go to hospital. But I think you being at that hospital, if you are wanting to stay on, like they said, it does give you an advantage because you know the staff, like you know how to build rapport with everyone, you know the system and logistics of that hospital. So yeah, if you want to stay on, like there is a good chance that you can.
Great, thank you guys. Hey, Sue, you've got a question for you. Are there other sides to Gosh, or is it just the one at Great Ormond Street?
So it's just the one to my knowledge. So well, training anyway, I am based in one hospital. Like there are charities and things related to Gosh, but that's not really like a training site. And we do have access to all of the UCL libraries, so I guess that is dotted around. But Great Ormond Street itself, and its hospital, that is all in one area.
Great, thank you. So from what I can see, those are all the questions. If anybody has any more questions, please speak now. Oh, okay, got a question. Got a question for myself. So, how does a day in a GP look like as a pre-reg? So, I've actually not gone onto my GP placement just yet. So I'm doing 6 months in hospital at the minute, and then I'm gonna in January, I'm gonna finish my placement at hospital and then start at the GP. But from the conversation I've had with my supervisor at the GP, it's quite similar to what you'd kind of expect in a GP. So there are a lot of kind of consultations with patients. You're kind of sharing the workload with the GPs and other healthcare professionals within the GP. So, for instance, advanced nurse practitioners, quite a lot of sort of new medicine services. So, for instance, if somebody has started on a new medicine, you just kind of call them to check up on how they're doing with it. Also blood pressure monitoring and, you know, kind of the things that you see in like your OSCEs, like for example, things to do with diabetes, like diabetic foot checks, all of that, all of those kind of clinical areas. So yeah, so that's kind of what I've got to look forward to. In terms of the specifics, I'm sorry that I can't like give you them just now. But if you do want to know in January and you're still asking that question, feel free to just, you know, message me or email me. Or just go to the BPSA Instagram or website and just ask a question through there. But yeah, so it's quite, I'd say more personal in terms of you do get to know your patients more. I did ask kind of like, do we kind of get our own patients and things like that? So, and my supervisor replied with, yeah, you kind of have like your own sort of cohort of patients that you really get to know your patients because you kind of spend a lot of time with them over like a couple of months or years or whatever. So yeah, it's quite yeah, I really like the, you know, the very personalized, like patient facing aspect of it. So, yeah, that's sort of what I've got to look forward to. Great. Okay, so that is all the questions that I can see so far. Um, yeah, if anybody has any more questions, please feel free in the next kind of couple of seconds to put them through. But I think we'll kind of round up the webinar now. Yeah, so like we said, good luck in your Oriel exam and wishing the best of luck with your final year. We hope that this webinar has really kind of given you some tips and advice on how to kind of face the exam. And we hope we've kind of like decreased your anxiety a little bit more. I'll just leave the links up there if anybody want to copy it. But like we said, this will be distributed through our social media, and you'll be able to access it through there. So yeah, thank you so much for joining us this evening, guys. We hope you took something from it, and we'll see you at the next webinar Wednesday. Yeah, thank you. Bye, guys.
Thank you.
Everyone.